There is no doubt that the teaching profession is in something of a crisis at the moment. Retention is proving to be a real problem. And in fact, a United Nations global report on teaching reveals an urgent need for 44 million primary and secondary teachers around the world by 2030. And that includes a demand for 7 out of 10 teachers at the secondary level. And talking about retention, a need to replace over half of the existing teachers leaving the profession. So what are the realities of recruitment and retention for us here in the UAE? Joining me now is Punit Vasu. He is the CEO of the Indian High Group of Schools. Punit, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Good to be back. Thank
Lovely.
you for having me.
Well, yes, great to have you here. I mean, obviously, Dubai looking to expand its school offering very quickly indeed. Do you think we could see a bit of a talent crunch?
Well, the numbers are mind-boggling, right? We heard the KHDA. You're talking about a 6% year-on-year enrollment growth. You're talking about almost 387,000 students. Dubai has a very strong, booming private education sector, 27,000 educators, 34 Indian curriculum schools, 10 new schools are opened up. Dr. Wafi mentioned 100 schools. So yes, it's a good problem to have in the sense that the numbers are strong, growth rates are very, very good. So I would say it's a nice problem to have. But then we all know what drives schools is not the hardware, but the software. And who's the software? It's the educators, it's the teachers, right? So we have very, very strong demand from the learners. But all of us are figuring out the piece of the jigsaw puzzle in terms of how do we ensure we have a steady pipeline of educators and teachers. So yes, and if you look at KHDA's strategy very, very closely with E33, there's a lot of focus on affordable seats and affordable education. We all know a major chunk of a school's operating expenses, rent, infrastructure, and obviously salaries, remuneration, right? So if you're looking at affordability and affordable schools, then the major component, the major metric that you've got to focus on is obviously teacher compensation and affordability in that particular line item. So I would say it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And you mentioned earlier in the show, and we heard the voice piece about retention. Yes. Yes. What schools are doing in terms of retention. So I think schools across the board are very, very strong in terms of looking at retention policies. It's almost often the small things that matter. We have a program called Happy to Hear, where all our team members are happy to put in ideas, suggestions, and sometimes it's the very, very small things that really matter in terms of retention. In our case, I'll give you an example. We operate in a very densely populated area where parking is challenging. So one of the first key items that popped up where educators were really upset about was actually finding a parking space. What did we do about it? We spoke to the RTA. We negotiated a flat rate for the zone around our school at approximately 100, 150 dirhams a month for parking, RTA parking. And you can't imagine how happy that has made our teachers. It means that that problem that they had in their mind has completely gone away.
That's so clever because, you know, I got a parking ticket today, and if my boss, the number of times I get a parking ticket, and if my boss helped me by providing a parking place, I can't tell you how much happier I would be. And it's because it's that daily niggle, isn't it? It's so interesting. Do you ever find it hard to recruit teachers at the salaries you're able to offer?
So like I mentioned, right, now the quest is for affordable schools, and you're seeing an increasing number of Indian teachers now working and playing in the space of affordable UK curriculum. If you look at the KHDA statistics again, the most popular schools are the UK curriculum schools and the Indian curriculum schools. A major chunk of the school-going population is between these two schools. There are 34 Indian curriculum schools, I think approximately 90-odd UK curriculum schools. And of the 227, this is the majority, right? So when you're talking about affordable seats and when you're talking about affordable education, you're seeing a lot of affordable UK curriculum schools enter into this space. Again, that means that teachers of Asian origin who are qualified are actually now in hot demand. So schools like ours, which typically have benefited from a pretty large pool of teachers available in India and the subcontinent, now are having to compete with the kind of fantastic growth rates in India because the school population in India is booming. India as a city is booming. India, China, and all the rest of the world. And similarly, you now have this quest for these teachers to now work in the affordable UK curriculum schools as well. And I think moving away from retention, we also have to look at slightly more positively disruptive ideas in the recruitment space. There seems to be a lot of currency attached to traditional, conventional teaching qualifications. But if we actually dig and scratch the surface beneath, why aren't we disrupting that space by seeing what weightage can we attach to people out there who want to teach, don't have a conventional teaching qualification, have years of experience, have years of subject expertise? Is there an opportunity for the regulator, for the examination boards, for the accrediting boards and the schools to get together and say, well, hang on a minute, we need to widen the pool. Right? Currently, we are focusing on qualified teachers with pedagogy and conventional qualifications and subject matter expertise. How do we widen that pool? What is there to say that if you have an MIT graduate who's got a degree in coding, right? And coding is such a relevant current topic, and has got 2 years or 3 years or whatever years of subject expertise and work experience. What weightage do we attach to that knowledge if he or she doesn't have a traditional teaching qualification?
Yeah, you can imagine someone young and vibrant and enthusiastic coming into the school space in that context and being very inspiring for young children and to be offering, practical, not life skills, but practical coding skills, for example. Punit, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm going to keep you with me if that's okay. Punit, what do you think needs to change to encourage more people to go into teaching? Because clearly that's what we need.
So, we heard the regulatory piece. So the regulator has a very aggressive target. And I think the answer also lies with the regulator. So if we can have more flexible, more fluid regulations, allowing a greater part of the population to enter the teaching sector. All right. So if you're talking about specialists who have professional credentials, who actually want to give back and come back to teaching, right? And if we can look at options where the onus and the responsibility is given to the schools, it's almost like buyer beware, where we have our own series of tests and assessments as to who would make a good teacher, if they're coming in with industry experience, if they're coming in with professional credentials, and then we add our bit on top in terms of training. So if we can, like I said earlier on, widen the pool, it requires positive disruption from the regulator. Currently, you have certain policies in place. It's a bit of hit and miss, where you have people with online credentials, online teaching qualifications, and they're not allowed to enter the market. It could be the ministry, it could be the KHT, whatever, but they need to speak to each other. If you have a teacher recruited from one school with the KHT approval coming into our school, say, or any other school, then we got to go through the process again. You got the attestation and accreditation process, which can be onerous, which takes a bit of time. So, you got the fields like dance, music and art, where there's insistence on, again, a specialist degree, whereas in those fields, such as performing arts, a lot of currency and weightage could be given to experience and pure passion and drive, rather than a traditional or a conventional degree. So if we can have the regulator work with schools to almost look at these flexible options. I'm not saying that the traditional teaching qualifications and credentials should go away, but if we need to cope with the kind of growth that demand that Dubai is expecting and the surge in population, you're talking about 6% is going to keep increasing year on year. All right, then definitely I would say the regulatory piece becomes extremely critical in helping schools recruit the right kind of teachers.
I bet there's a lot of competition between schools now for good teachers. Do you sort of share information between you, or do you try and keep your best teachers secret?
Well, you're right? And I think we don't use this word poaching, but there's a lot of poaching that is happening in the industry. And again, that is something which needs to be looked at carefully, because unlike other jobs and other professions, like your role or my role for that matter, which could be management related, there's a 1 month or a 3 month notice. Teachers, educators impact human beings, right? They impact parents, they impact learners. And, you and I both have been in a situation where we have been distraught when a good teacher has left and our children have been absolutely gutted.
Yeah, midterm.
Midterm.
I mean, it's like a dislocation. It's bizarre when they go midterm.
Yeah, absolutely. So unless there is extraordinary circumstances, we should work with the regulators, with the Ministry of Human Resources and Labour, where such movement between an academic year is something that should be managed and monitored. And I think that's a critical piece again. It shouldn't be viewed as yet another job where if X wants to leave and go to another school, then we do have some unwritten code of ethics. There are schools, and we keep talking. Our schools keep talking. We keep talking to each other. And sometimes when there's a lot of movement, then I think we get on the phone and say, well, hey, hang on a minute. This is going to disrupt. Because if somebody's going to poach from my school, given the kind of clout and muscle that I have, I'm going to go and poach from another school. It keeps trickling down. It's eventually the smaller school, the newer school, the youngest school that gets affected, right? Because we have been in the system for a long time, so we are able to recruit. But the new schools, the smaller schools, the ones that don't have a critical number of students are the ones that get affected. So definitely recruitment and poaching is something that we can look at as well.
My goodness me, always fascinating to have you in the studio, Punit. Thank you so much for your time. Really interesting to dig into that subject of teacher recruitment. Punit Vasu, CEO of the Indian High Group of Schools. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.